It's a pleasure to introduce today's speaker, someone whose journey beautifully weaves together art and nature. Trained in fine arts and painting, Gundula Deutschländer began her creative path through color, texture, and composition on canvas. But over time, her eye for beauty and form found a new medium, the living landscapes of plants and gardens. What began as an artistic curiosity soon grew into a lifelong passion, and her connection with the natural world didn't just inspire her work, it also helped her to find her voice. Once a shy artist, she tells me, she has discovered in plants an eloquent subject to speak for, and through them has become a confident advocate and spokesperson. Her journey took her far from her South African roots, first to Scotland, then to the Lake District in the UK, and later, thanks to MGS's own Sally Razalou, to Greece, each place deepening her understanding of the garden as both art and ecosystem. Eventually, she returned home to South Africa, where she has spent the past 17 years cultivating and caring for the magnificent Babylonstoren, one of the country's and the world's most celebrated and visited gardens, about which she speaks to us tonight. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Gundula. If you'd like to share your screen now. Okay, no, sorry, I forgot to tell you, sorry, that I have to mute everyone and
that's fine.
Okay,
I've been speaking like a mouse.
Okay, thank you again for being here. Let's start. It's lovely to see you. I can see your full screen. It's wonderful.
It's an incredible privilege to be on this site with all of you. It's always been inspiration to listen to these lectures. And it's marvelous to be here. Can you hear me clearly? Should I speak up a little? We're good. Okay. So this is me, very seldom to have some time to rest, but I'm lying on our chamomile lawn in the garden, and it's one of the joys of Babylonstoren garden. It's just tells so much about our own place, where it's an immersive experience, and lying on the Roman chamomile just brings all your senses alive. So I just thought this was a very good way to introduce myself as the happy gardener and the mother of Babylonstoren's garden, where I have been now for about 16, 17 years, and it's a new garden, but so heavily linked to our history that it makes so much sense with whatever we do here. So I'll give you a little bit of an idea where we are set. Let me just see. Oh, please, like, no, it's still, I'm just figuring out. Who's you figuring out? So, there we go. Okay, activated. So I was lying on that little lawn over there amidst a 3.5 hectare garden property. We very much a vegetable garden based on the history that as the settlers came past 300 years ago, this was one of the very first farms that had to provide food and sustenance to the passing travelers. And we welcome all our guests visiting to enjoy the Babylonstoren experience in that same way. So you can walk through the garden at the moment. Our peaches are just budding into ripeness. There are strawberries that I've been nibbling today, and it's really summer at the moment. So we are, experiencing some pretty intense summer's days, but it's just wonderful how the aromas just come alive with this wonderful scent. So our farm in the last few years has grown enormously. I'm going to just point with the arrow from the manor house, which is over here. We've got this piece of land that the farmer gave us because he never wanted to work there. It really was a rubbish dumping site. And then the farm stretches up all the way to these hills. This here is Simonsberg. So if you stand at that distance, you can actually see Simon van der Stel, one of the first governors of South Africa, who is lying there fast asleep, snoring. Stellenbosch, the town that has his name, honors him, is just behind this mountain. And then our land extends round about here. It curls back in. This lovely hill is very important to us, and about 3 kilometers now towards the east, in our direction, where the river flows. Not quite reaching the river, but that's more or less the idea. Here you've got another view. So the road that would link Franschhoek, which is down the valley, to Cape Town, used to travel down this pathway here, with all the ox wagons trundling past, gathering sustenance to take it to the ships. And the land. So, knowing the Mediterranean Garden Society and knowing the ethos is very much about being water-wise and enjoying the native plants we have around here, I've not focused this talk very much on the main garden itself. It's very formally laid out, very much like gardens would have been at that era when the farmhouse would have been built. I have really focused on talking more about the surrounding areas and where we have indigenous planting and a specific interest in bees. So that's the journey we're going on. Okay. This hill is Babylonstoren. It is where the farm receives its name. It means the Tower of Babel. And when you enter the garden, you actually will be walking along this pathway, and eventually you could climb up this hill as you were circulating up the Tower of Babel. So we have this wonderful name, Babylonstoren, because when the early pioneers came, they were speaking Dutch. They had to make friends with the local community here, which were nomads traveling around. They were the Khoi and the Sun people. They have their own marvelous language. A lot of these lovely clickety-clack sounds. Very rhythmic. And then, of course, to help create these large farms, they got some craftspeople and slaves from all over. So with this incredible rich cultures merging in, this new culture was created. And with that came, of course, all these different languages and the plants, and that's what makes it so rich. So all of us working on the farm, and there are probably now about 700 permanent workers, we all internally speak Afrikaans with each other, which is my mother tongue, and it's very much that amalgamation, not quite the right word, but it's a wonderful, very young language. In fact, the youngest one in the world, and we've only celebrated this year it being 100 years old. And the culture very much allows our garden to grow with it. And it's been interesting because the development of the garden in the last 16 years has been focusing very much on what are edible plants, which is within the main garden. I'll show you here, this is quite a quick one to have a look at. That design at the back there is what Cape Town looked like before the city encroached the garden. So Cape Town originally was one massive garden, and it's not quite easy to see the map, but it's a grid system, typical of the era. The fountain in front here was a replica of the fountain that was found at the castle in Cape Town. Lovely dolphins spouting water. And the water we're using is water that comes down the stream from the mountain itself. I've added the bee museum here, the insect hotel, because everybody wants to come and stay over. Humans, insects, wild creatures, you name it. So this is the chefs going on their harvest, and where the main garden is very much what we call a historic garden, focused on the edibles that we would like to give to the restaurants and to passing visitors. We have grown by creating a surrounding a safety net around this with indigenous plants. And that is how our collections are growing. So that is the opportunity for expansion beyond the main garden, which includes the stream that you see on the side here, a mixture of oak trees and wild olives, and then all the way up, expanding on this side here, and even on this side of the mountain. So I'll take you on that journey. Water is essential. Our historical garden does get irrigation regularly, and we have water rills crisscrossing throughout the garden and feeding into these fish ponds. Here we have our native blue water lily, which you'll find right throughout Africa, all the way to Egypt. And then we have the lovely nymphoides down below, the yellow flower, which the insects adore too. All our water lilies have incredible scent. So the other exotic water lilies that I've selected to grow in neighboring ponds are named after grapefruit and raspberries, and they actually smell like the fruit themselves. So we've really kept with the edible theme as far as we could. Within the historical garden, because we're growing an enormous collection of varieties, we have to graft a lot of the trees. And the tree on your right is a medlar that was grafted into a quince. And I imagine at night, these trees uproot themselves and they have a wonderful wild party dancing about the garden. Because they really are ridiculous trees. They're really circus trees. And this gentleman over here, Wim Anton, who is on your left, he's the creator of these fantastical trees. He had his birthday now on Monday, and he turned 86. He lives almost about 40 minutes away, and he still comes 3 times a week, loves being in the garden, loves doing all kinds of wicked, crazy stuff with the trees, but it is so enriching what he brings. His history is working in mostly apple orchards, and he was delighted when he retired that he could actually just create various other interesting grafting and crazy fruit tree collaborations with some of our young interns that become gardeners. Kumin over here has learned a lot from him, so we can continue with the knowledge that's being spread. Of course, with all these wonderful trees, we've got fantastic birds. This is called the Jan Fiscal. It's the fiscal shrike. It has many names. The bird, because it loves feeding on the insects. It's really valuable for us who like to have fruit without worms inside, to encourage as much diversity with birds. I think it's the birds that really keep me the happiest in the garden. Just to hear them about, today we found some nests which were beautiful of sunbirds and the Cape white-eye, but this invitation to allow our surrounding nature to thrive, to see birds that I haven't seen before come to visit us and just enjoy it in such a credible way and share their birdsong is complete magic. We, of course, have created large birds' nests for you to hide in and to watch these birds. I always encourage guests to fall asleep in them because the birds will wake you up later, and we plant various plants to encourage the birds. Particularly our aloes, so many native plants too that will encourage the birds. This is aloe arborescens, the candelabra aloe, and sunbirds thrive around it. In fact, in times of drought, I hardly have any blooms in my own garden. I live against the mountain, about half an hour away, and it's very, very dry there. And the birds will actually feed on the buds of these aloes even before they open up. They just get so hungry at times. Here are some of my colleagues. We have a team of I think it's about 50 strong at the moment. And I just didn't have enough photos to fill up the whole page. We need to make our collection. But on the left, we have Tanisha. She is in charge of our vegetable department. She's joy to work with. Young lady who's started as an intern, I think only about 3 or 4 years ago, and has taken on great responsibility. This is with one of the giant pumpkins that we're growing. On the right is my steadfast companion, Constance. She is a true inhabitant of our own valley and has shared so many stories and richness of our actual valley itself. Her grandmother lived to be the ripe old age of 102, and so had these wonderful medicinal remedies that she would then share with Constance, who shared with all of us, and that's how he stays strong. In fact, I'm holding in my hand the Artemisia afra, which is one of the main ingredients of this remedy. And it just, yeah, it gives so much courage. It's a wonderful aroma. And we love having this as plants to fortify us. Constance is a complete joy to work with. This is really one of my favorite parts of the garden. There's no tree that I love more than the olive, and our native olive is magnificent. This tree here on the left, right, is possibly 250 years old, maybe older. And we have planted by the stream where these trees grow underneath in the dappled shade an enormous collection of claviers. This is a collection that really started all the other collections that we've been working on. These plants that you see here flower in our springtime, so they very much symbolize the African spring. And you can see there are various colors in here. So these were a gift from the owner's brother, who has to be a medical doctor in his normal profession, but he is a complete clavier fanatic. And he grew all of these plants from seed in his kitchen on the windowsills. He must have made his wife completely, utterly crazy. And he gave us claviers that he didn't particularly like that much. But when he comes to visit us, he loves boasting about his fabulous claviers, and he does deserve an applause because they are marvelous. When I enjoy them, I feel like I'm listening to a blasting jazz symphony. They just are trumpets from one end to the next, just bronzing away. And they're gorgeous. So they last for us possibly more or less a month. We have different varieties, and eventually we managed to find a very rare collection, which I'm going to show you, which we show off in a structure that we call the puff adder. I love how with time we've been able to build layers onto the garden. And the puff adder is a marvelous example of it, because it really came almost as a punctuation mark at the end of our historical garden. It's a structure that curls around these enormous eucalyptus trees, and it just kind of holds you there. It's just the end of the main garden that just gives you time to ponder and admire varieties, really. Because it was really important for the owner of the farm, Chris Becker, that we explore as many varieties as possible. And it can either be a collection of different techniques. For example, with vegetables, we'll do different styles of growing vegetables, whether it's crop rotation or permaculture or methods of working with the soil. Or we will work in terms of as many varieties of a specific plant that we can collect. And the puff adder is the best place to exhibit it. So the name puff adder, of course, that's the puff adder from above. Really plays homage to these wonderful reptiles, that if there's a paradise, you have to really acknowledge that the snake has a place in it. I'm terrified of snakes. I have them visiting my own home often, and I'm like, ooh, breathe. But we know that the snakes have a valuable role to play, and so all the gardeners have had snake observation classes, and we know how to stay calm. And in general, I keep them out of the garden with the barrier of tulbachia. That's our indigenous wild garlic. You probably know it from Mediterranean areas where it just flowers a whole of summer long. And that I have as a wonderful boundary with a scent to just keep the snakes into the wild area, not particularly in the main garden where children are running around. We do tend to have mostly cobras and puff adders, and a few harmless snakes in between, skorpstieker, various ones like that. But reptiles are important to us, particularly for worm adults, that I'll introduce soon. So with our collections, we have continued mostly focusing on indigenous collections. This is the cycad collection, or a part of it, where we have collected most of the southern African varieties. I believe there's only one or two that we haven't been able to find to include into the collection. And because cycads are really reminiscent from the dinosaur times, we know that they're on the brink of dying out. In the wild, they've been over harvested or collected and sold off. And so we're very fortunate to be able to have a pretty impressive collection. The most recent additions have been cycads I consider to be like rhinos. This one over here is a good example, and it's of the, oh, let me just get the name of it. It's woodii, Encephalatus woodii, of which, unfortunately, only male cycads have been found. And so there's still a hunt to try and find a female. There are also various hybridizing projects to try and eke out a female that might be a little bit more reminiscent of the woodii. But so far, nobody has been able to find a female. So we have two really massive, impressive males plants. They tower, what should it be, 10 meters at least, and they're pretty solid. It's always risky to transplant these cycads. They need to be planted in sterilized sand to prevent any fungal rotting, and we only irrigate them by hand for the period that it might take to get them to settle down and root again. We don't really find cycads in our environment. So these were all brought in from around the country. Some of them have been living in the Cape for many years. And we planted quite a lot of tree ferns, which are endemic to the canyons of the mountains, in amongst them, with various other succulents. So yes, the partly started with cycads because they also have a link in terms of edibility. We call them in Afrikaans broodboom, meaning bread tree, but you have to be very wise to be able to eat them. If you don't go through the process of fermentation, you'd actually just kill yourself. So old wisdom is very valuable in appreciating how people would have survived during droughts in previous times. This is the most fantastic botanist that we have on our team, Adams van Jaarsveld. He is a marvelous gardener to be amongst, very, very humble, but incredibly knowledgeable. And much of the rest of my talk will be focusing on plants that he's been able to find and introduce to the garden. At the moment, he is on a expedition hunting for plants. He goes regularly, mostly collecting seeds or things that might have broken off and fallen down. And here he is standing with our quiver tree, which is Aleodendron dichotomum, and would be endemic to more the northern Cape. The tree does at times grow in wonderful forests, but with our increasing droughts, many of these forests have also started to disappear, which is pretty sad. It has a long history with our indigenous people, the Sun people, where the stems, which Ernst is holding here, are actually hollow on the inside. They've got a sponge-like internal structure, which is easily hollowed out, and the Sun people would put their bows into these and carry it with their, the arrows into these, carry it with a bow to go hunting. They produce the most exquisite lemon yellow blooms in the middle of winter, which I thoroughly enjoy, along with the birds. And we have planted these on a rockery. I'm going to show you a few more details. We have here various flowers, but I think I have extracted them separately. So I'm going to see if I can do them one at a time. Maybe not. Okay. Let me just go back to these. So we have, on the left, we have the biggest bulb in the world that can, a flowering bulb. We call it the seeroogblom, meaning the painful eye flower. I would hate to use the medicine to use for painful eyes, because I know it's really toxic. But what its botanical name is Brunsvigia josephinia, and it loves flowering for us in winter. They will dry out, and if the wind pops up, start tumbling over the landscape, dispersing their seed in that way. Very dramatic in the landscape. This little garden here to the left where they're growing is to exhibit what the landscape looks like just beyond the mountains on the side. So I'm just going to point out here. Behind these mountains, we already start with a Karoo. So where our area where the garden is situated is Mediterranean, it actually becomes a semi-dry desert, the Karoo, on the other side of those mountains. And we have, in this part of our historical garden, added the indigenous garden, which represents various parts of the Southern Cape, Western Cape that we are situated. The other trees we have here, well, they're very small now, but they will grow, are the botterbome, butter trees, because they've got these lovely smooth stems in summertime that in the olden days we've heard young children would actually climb onto them, hold onto the branches, and sledge down the rocky slopes with these. They're obviously in some parts of the Karoo just cover the mountainsides. The plant here centrally is garb. That's also the local traditional name. It's a hoodii, and it's a very important native plant to the indigenous people, because when they had to go out hunting, they would actually peel off these very spiny outer extremity of this succulent and actually chew the inside, which I've tasted is bittersweet. And by chewing that, it would really give you stamina, reduce your thirst, and prevent you from feeling hungry. Because when you go hunting, you actually have to outrun the antelope. And this plant was essential to allow for that endurance to get their supper. Wonderful flower there. It normally gets pollinated by flies, similar to the orbia that we have on the side here. This one is, let's see here. It's a plant that I find growing often in dappled shade under the wild olives. I've seen the antelope and the cows munching on it now and again. And so it has to be really well camouflaged. And when it does bloom, it stenches. We call it the Aasblom, meaning, well, it's carrier flower is the common name. It really just stinks like rotting meat, and the flies love humming around it. And they really come in wonderful shapes and sizes. I really, like their formations. It's a lovely surprise to see them always in the veld. This is our succulent house that we had to build to really curate all our lovely succulents. Many of our succulents actually prefer to grow under scrub and in the shelter of bigger bushes. And so the diffused light that comes through the roof really assists to keep them healthy. We hand water all these pots, and the pots were beautiful. They were handmade by a lovely potter who unfortunately passed away in a flash flood a few years ago. But it's wonderful to see how the plants just keep on growing, and they're just so well made in unison from the earth and being comfortable there in these pots. So Adams has created this incredible collection. We would like to boast one day that it's the best succulent collection in the world. And each table actually represents a family. So we have the Sansevierias that are here, quite a nice mix of mother-in-law's tongues. They grow more in the Eastern Cape, in slightly forested areas, and again, comes quite remarkable shapes. And I love seeing their shy flowers that appear at the base with these little red berries later on. The other tables represent Gusterias. We have lots of Mesembryanthemum, particularly those lovely stone plants. And sure, I can't remember all of these, but they are fabulous to go and explore because the variety in each family is phenomenal. Okay. Outside, under the quiver trees, we have more Mesembryanthemum, and these ones that you probably have growing as weeds in some of your coastal areas happens to be my favorite first aid plant. So when I get sunburnt, I use the sap of these. When I get any bites, mosquito bites, I use them as medicine. Sore throat, you name it. It's the most wonderful plant. So we actually have been trying to increase the collection that we have and planted, I think, about 8 varieties now, with you're finding them all along the coastal regions. We've been able to build on the collection, really hoping that the fruit, you can see the little fruit appearing here, would ripen for us in December because they are very tasty and have a good, vitamin C content. This is a rock curry from above, and this theme of planting the succulents in between the rocks is what we've really been building on. So really starting from the right, moving on towards the left and encircling the white wall that you see above, we have continued for, I want to say half a kilometer. It feels like it. This wonderful strip up along a stream with various collections and biomes representing from Northern Cape, which is the lovely red sand that you see here, Namibia, Northern Cape, all along the southern coast towards the east, and eventually ending with rocks that were gifted to us from the Limpopo province. These rocks claimed to be the oldest in the world. They're 3.5 billion years old. And just before I had this meeting here, I ran out to them to put my hand on them to just kind of give me some perspective of where our place is in the world, really. Amazing. It's a nice, great sounding geological name. And they were created with volcanic stress. So we've got pretty large monumental rocks of these with plants that will be well suited to these different regions. Mostly succulent plants that we don't really have to irrigate much, and yeah, nice variety. So I would like to share with you a little bit on how Adams van Jaarsveld goes about enriching our garden. You can see here one of his first expeditions were to the Northern Cape and Namibia, and the red sand over here is what he brought back. So every time he goes out to collect plants and seeds, he'll bring rocks and sand along with it so that they are well anchored and rooted here. Amongst the sand here, we have this being a fossilized tree that's collapsed over the garden. And it's just, again, that's perspective timeline, which is wonderful to see with the plants that have been found. The main focus for that area is for the Welwitschia. The Welwitschia, you might know, is a plant that can live the longest. This is one of the plants that he collected seed from. You can see, I think this is actually a male plant. So these would have been the flowers that would have pollinated the females. But Adams here, together with Cornel Bierkus on the left, and one of our interns we had at the time on the right, went off all the way to Angola to collect seed from Welwitschias. Yes. Oh, sorry. I think we're actually on the screen. There. Sorry. He thinks that possibly this specimen is almost 2,000 years old. So Welwitschia is generally a plant that has only 2 leaves, and they will grow slowly, 2 centimeters at a time every year. But as the wind blows, they actually shave their leaves on the sand, and so they will not become ginormous. They will just grow according to the weather. So this is a wonderful specimen that he went to visit. Hans loves going on expeditions, and he particularly likes finding succulents that are growing on the cliffs. He finds it phenomenal how our plants have adapted to their environments, because there are so many animals that would actually like to eat them. And the only way to survive, because you can't walk away, is to either have thorns or be toxic, or find a way of growing on a cliff where you can really just be a cliffhanger, a little wallflower, and feel safe there. So he often goes actually rock climbing on these cliffs to gather various seeds from these plants. And this is the K River. So on our eastern extremity of the Cape is this pretty long river that he's now gone on excavations already 3 times to do different sections of the river. It's very treacherous, and he often comes back with bumps all over and bruises, but he loves the adventure. Adams is at the moment, I think he is, how old would it be? 76, I believe. And he just thrives on this. It's very exciting. Lovely to see what he brings back every time. So these are one of his cliff-loving plants. It's a Gasteria and the seed that he collected from that. We call this Beerstorm. The flowers are actually lovely to nibble on, but they're too pretty. This is where they were camping along the cliffs by the river. and very remote. These are some of the plants he's returned to our rockery. Some euphorbia. This euphorbia heptagona, and we have tortoise food to the left of it. And this one is euphorbia pulvinata, snuggling up there between the rocks. Loads of phages. This is Drosanthemum hispidum. It really carpets our environment. Exquisite to see. And there are always little bulbs in between and these lizards running around these rocks. With Adam's exploring the whole countryside, he happened across a rock piano. This is an imitation of a rock piano that the Sun people would have created millennia ago. It would have been means of communicating, place of holding ceremonies, and would have naturally used the rocky outcrops in the Karoo often, where these rocks with high iron content would ring and resonate. And when you hit on these stones, so these ones have been created to actually lie aloft above other rocks. And when you knock on them, they really sound like church bells ringing. An incredible sound. So we love gathering in people and children there, and they can make this wonderful raucous noise. But when you're actually out in the desert and you're standing on these rocky outcrops, to hear the sound just reverberating over these flat plains is remarkable. Yeah. So our garden actually now extends beyond this area here along the wall, all the way up to our new bee museum. But with us working with our rockeries, we've added the theme to some of the areas where our hotel is. These are hotel visitors cycling back from having breakfast down in a restaurant. And these are some of the accommodation they can stay in. But I love the area in front of the hotel where we've really been working on the fynbos. So the type of fynbos in our valley, in our area, is called renosterveld. And when you hear the sound renoster, it really is rhinoceros veld vegetation. And it grows generally the height of a rhino, so they can hide in amongst it, and of course produces the wonderful vegetation that they would like to eat. Our landscape has a relationship with fire, as all Mediterranean climates have. And so we've got a lot of low-growing scrub with a couple of shrubs in between, and mostly the trees that can resist the wildfires and the wind are the wild olives. They seem to just get the fire cutting through it, and then they just resprout again. Our fynbos has incredible richness of essential oils, so really fragrant, and the aroma is wonderful when you walk through. One of the shrubs I really enjoy is this one here to the left, which we call camphorfoelie, meaning camphorous foliage, and it's a Tarkonanthus. And I always love scrunching the leaves together just for the aroma. You can see at the moment here, it's actually got the fluff from the seed pods that the birds love collecting for their nests. And yeah, it's a super windbreak, wonderful tree to plant at a border. That's one of the trees I plant first because it grows super fast. One of my favorite activities on the farm is to go canoeing on the reservoir here. So this family down here, they're fishing over there. There's some wonderful fish. So I would sometimes paddle out with my son when he comes to help me in the garden. And it's his treat after helping me that he can actually have a little bit of fishing on the dam. I love exploring it because they're little islands, and the moorhen always have these big nests they've been building there. If you're really, really lucky, you might see a water monitor, which looks exactly like a dinosaur. It's like a little crocodile that's just very shy, so we don't have to worry about bites. But I often go collecting herbs here. This is me gathering in some of the fynbos, particularly like the Eriocephalus, which is our indigenous rosemary. Its habit is exactly like rosemary, but it's a native plant, not related in the least. And I love using it in cooking as a substitute. Again, you can see the little seed heads in my basket here that are most beloved by the birds for nesting. So a wonderful richness that you have with that. It is one of the plants that you would actually notice when the land has been overgrazed. So where previously the sheep and the deer have grazed, it's one of the pioneering plants that just kind of waited out to the next fire, and the next seed bank is exposed for bulbs to emerge and various other plants. So generally what we have also quite obvious in areas like this are various salvias, metalasia, pelargoniums. They're all pretty drought tolerant and gorgeous. This is just another view. The shrub right in front on the right is Sarsia, which at the moment is producing little berries. We sometimes call it the raisin bush. It's a herb that's really spicy and very nice to munch when you walk through the veld, because it's very thirst quenching. And it's been very interesting to see how we engage with our environment, because generally people tend to revere it more when they can see what value it has to humans, not necessarily, the diversity that it also brings. And so for us to include things that can be used for medicine or in culinary means actually just gives handles for people to feel that they have value. And so these are the means that we can focus on to just share more of the information with people and get them then to delve into various other plants that are not necessarily for human beings, but for the other animals. So that's why I'm always kind of interested in how we can use as much as we can and share. Of course, the bees absolutely adore our environment, and we have a very fabulous entomologist, Arne, that works with us and has guided us very much in all the insects that we need to acknowledge in the garden. But most of the time he's employed by taking care of the bees. We are very lucky to have a very special bee in the Cape. So that's Arne in the center. And these are photos from the bees gathering pollen. Look how enormous are those pollen sacs to the left. And nectar from our orange blossoms that were flowering a few months ago. Our bees, the Cape honeybee, is a very special bee. And so we've created a whole museum dedicated to this honeybee. I'm actually sitting just next to the Byzantium. We've only opened this museum a month ago, so it's wonderful new information to delve into. But I'm going to just go back to the bee itself. So our Cape honeybee, because of our threat of fire and drought and sometimes very cold winters, are very clever in that if the queen bee goes on her pollination flight and gets impregnated high up in the sky, it's often at a time when there's very strong winds and she might be blown off course. And so if she doesn't return to the hive, our worker bees, who are all, of course, young maidens, have an ability to create another queen. And you don't get that with many other bees anywhere else in the world. And so just when they happen to be in stress, or when they feel that the queen bee doesn't necessarily do her duty, maybe she's finished laying the amount of eggs that she can possibly lay, they will actually be able to recreate a queen. Here they're busy putting some pollen into a hive, and those are the colored bits. And as you can see, we have so many varied plants they can gather from pollen that it's very rich. I try very much in our garden to grow as much diversity to feed the bees and the various solitary bees with enough food right throughout the year. That's one of my main jobs, I think, to keep them happy right throughout the year. That is the queen bee cell over here. And so when you come to our bee museum, you will actually be able to sit in a representative of our queen bee cell to admire the view beyond. I think things from here are going to go a little bit funny because I have a feeling that I've had, no, that's a beautiful way to end. When you're a working bee, this is just the perfect way that you want to end the day. So we have a gelatery on the farm. This is me and my colleagues. Our entomologist, of course, in the beekeeping suit over here, Arnay. This is Andra, who is head of our cut flower department. Me, Alex Bosman is our head gardener, and Brent is a wonderful, charming expert on fruit and vegetable gardening who takes care of our nursery. So we are enjoying the end of the day, and I hope one day when you come to visit us here, you might possibly be able to enjoy this in the same way. Thank you.
Thank you, Gundula. I think that we've all understood that it's a place where passionate people who have expertise and drive to create this beautiful collections are able to live and thrive. And I think that's a testament to the owner as well as all of his staff. And obviously showcasing this magnificent, diverse continent and country. It was absolutely an enchanting presentation. Thank you so much. I think, Willem-Jan, there were a couple of questions that came through on the chat during the time that Gundula was talking.
That's correct, Angela.
Okay, hi.
First of all, thank you so much for hosting another wonderful Zoom meeting for us.
Yeah.
And thank you, Gundula Deutschländer, so much for it was really an enchanting presentation. And it almost made me want to book a ticket to South Africa, which I'm ashamed. I've never been there and I'm Dutch myself. So there are so many connections and I could pick up so many words like kamperfoelie, you know, they are just common garden names for us. So thank you so much for a very beautiful presentation on your garden, which is obviously beautiful, but the way you talked about it made it even more beautiful. Your connection with history, the introduction of your staff, fabulous. And you made it a very sensual presentation. I could almost smell the lane of Clivia. I could hear the bees buzz. So thank you so much for that. We have a couple of questions, quite practical questions. The first one was about the dancing tree. It's a question from the UK. I don't know who put it there because it had a corporate company name. And the question was, how did you get the shape of the rootstock?
Oh, of the medlar?
Yeah, the dancing tree.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. So we generally with our medlars use the quince as rootstock. So with a palm fruit family, the quince grows really strong with us, and we use the quince as the original tree, then grafted the medlar on top. And subsequently, once that had really held properly, we actually planted 4 quinces either side, grafted them in, waited, I think it was almost 3 years for them to really hold. And then we sawed off their original one down below. So yeah, that was a wonderful adventure.
So it got a little help. And the tree we saw on your picture, what was the age? How long does it take to get a shape like this?
I don't remember. Let's say 12 years, I think. But we've been continuing with various other shapes all along. We're creating seats, and it just doesn't stop. The collection keeps on growing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Second question is from Jacqueline Potter from France, and she was asking you. You partly answered it with the B section. Do you suffer a lot from gales, hard winds, and in particular, which season does it happen?
Out now in summertime, and it can be pretty incessant. We call it the Cape Doctor because it cleans the air very well, and fortunately, even though it's very drying here, it brings rain to the interior parts of Africa. So yeah, but it is very strong, and it will be incessant from now, beginning of summer, to more or less February.
All right. So really the summer season.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, those were the questions. There were a lot of compliments also in the chat, but I would propose if there are any more questions, people could just raise their hand. Usually there's a button on the lower screen. I see one hand of Angela.
I would like to raise my hand, and
A live hand.
I can see Mirelle. I'll let Mirelle. I'll just go quickly. There's two quick questions. So, you said the role of the snakes. Well, what is the role of the snake in the garden?
Our main garden, the main focus was to have enough fruit and vegetables, and particularly with fruit, we have rodents, we have endemic jumping moles, something like that. They come out at night, and various other rodents. And so we know that really only the birds of prey and the snakes can keep them in check. We do have some feral cats, but those are the indigenous animals that keep them in check. And well, Adams van Jaarsveld particularly has an intense love for reptiles. So we have actually brought in many native snakes to boost the community, but they are not toxic. And then we just acknowledge the other toxic ones that we have around here. But we try to be very calm about them. Yes, despite being frightened of snakes, I once passed by a cobra about a meter away, and it was a remarkable experience. It was like meeting a king. He was very confident and comfortable in his skin. And those experiences really add a different perspective to how we live together.
Thank you. Okay, Mirelle, you need to unmute yourself and maybe show yourself. I don't know. Have you got low bandwidth? Because we don't see you. But anyway, go ahead.
Hi, Gundula. Thank you so much. The presentation was really interesting because I think it's hard to get a sense of scale. And I was actually born in South Africa, so to be able to see that was really, really, really great. I actually want to know about the context because it's such a dangerous country. Do you have any trouble with that? It's very extreme. Babylonstoren is such a beautiful garden, but then there's a lot of problems. And the other thing I want to know is about the rainfall regime. Do you have, because I think the Karoo there's parts that are split between summer rainfall and some that are winter rainfall. Does Babylonstoren, which one does it fall in?
No, we are very Mediterranean. So we definitely in the winter rainfall area. And in fact, that Karoo, the dry divide, helps to divide our Cape honeybee from the African honeybee. So that's a very important divide between the two areas. So yeah, we really enjoy a purely Mediterranean climate exactly at Babylonstoren where we are here. And in terms of the political context, it's very, very safe at Babylonstoren in itself. We are about half an hour away from Cape Town. So we're near the big city. but it does feel very pastoral in this area. And what's wonderful is my colleagues that work with me, many of them come from the surrounding townships, and the value that the garden presents for people who do live in very difficult conditions, and to have a safe space to come to during their work time really means enormous amount to them. This haven that we've created here, which allows people to grow in different facets, is extremely special, and you can really, it's tangible, you can feel it when you're here. When I left South Africa to work in Greece and England, it took me quite a while to feel confident to return, but it definitely was the best thing that I did. I love living in this country, and even though one is aware of the differences and the insecurities that we're living in, the humaneness amongst us and the way that the plants can also assist with that is fantastic. I find almost that working with the plants has allowed me to address in a very kind, supportive way so many of the issues that we've inherited with our political history. And it gives us hope, enormous hope.
Yeah, my family actually is in Battle, so they visit quite often. But that also leads me to ask, because it's such a big and expansive garden and collection, where do you work? What is your day like?
I feel very much like a Babylonstoren butterfly, because I am connected to various departments and linking with various departments, often sharing plants that I think will be best suited for product that might be needed to be created, or a situation that the plants will help to tell the story best, help to guide them through the seasons. But my main passion lies with the herbs. So wherever herbs need to be planted internally in the garden, but also I have a very special healing garden where I really focus on different means of sharing the herb information with people. I yesterday had a workshop where we were making various potions and sharing that knowledge with people. And recently we have been going over the hill to another annex of the farm that we call Sweet Milk Valley, where I've been able to make biodynamic compost, so that the composting that I use in the gardens really are vitalizing. And I like to see how we can strengthen it with dynamic principles and methods too. So I feel it helps to bring both the social and the physical aspects together in a beautiful way.
No, thank you so much.
Right. Anybody else like to ask Gundula a question? I must say that she's admitted. Ah, hello, Alex. Yes.
Yes, hello. Can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes.
Yes. I'm very curious looking at the wonderful lushness of the gardens, and what a great talk that was, really. Thank you so much. But looking at the lushness of your gardens and the supply of water you've got there, I have a garden in Greece and struggle with the usual Greek things of, excessive heat, dryness, not enough water, wind, and so on. And just wondering, when you look back on your time in Greece, is there anything you'd have done differently now that you have your South African experience?
Are you asking which ideas from Greece I could import to South Africa?
No, the other way around.
Okay, yes. I always just get excited to see South African plants in other places. That's for sure. I think I brought a huge amount from my travels back to South Africa. Maybe more than what I took with. I think when I worked in Britain, I worked in the Lake District. Then I really suffered from homesickness. And then I would bring in a South African structure of how our landscape, how the veld looks. I could see that was something that I needed in a way. So my heart very much lies with Mediterranean, and I struggled in the Lake District enormously. Yeah.
Sorry, that's an
No.
almost impossible question, I know. I was just looking very enviously at you.
Off the cuff. I'm sure if you were given a moment to think about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got another question, if I may. Are there any pink clivias?
There are some that are blush.
Blush.
They're soft, peachy, apricot colors,
Mm.
flesh color,
Mm.
but not quite rosy pink. The aim is to try and find a pure white one. We've got some exquisite green ones and very pale, creamy colored ones. But I can see that the hybridizing at the moment, the fashion is to try and find something that is pure white. Good luck to them. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, look, I think we'll wrap it up at that point. Let you get back to your son. And thank you for staying
So
late
much.
tonight to talk to us. Again, our compliments and our thanks. A wonderful, inspiring talk of a beautiful place.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much, and happy gardening to all of you.
Mm. Okay, everybody. So this is the last talk of the year. Going to have Christmas next month, so we'll be back in January, and I will be in touch with you all with the program, which is 2/3 full. So that's good. Okay, thank you all for joining. Thank you again to Gundula, and good night, everybody, and good morning to you if you're in California. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye.